What's shaking, everyone? So we got a big one here today. So this probably won't be the first time you're going to hear about it, but a grand jury in Kentucky has found that only one of the officers who were charged in the killing of Breonna Taylor was guilty of, well, the only thing that he was found guilty of is wanton endangerment. Now, what that means is that he didn't properly consider the life and safety of Breonna Taylor, and that's what he's going to be charged with. Now, before we dig into everything, what we're going to be doing here is laying out all the evidence that we have, dispelling some of the rumors that came out of the initial story that was circulated on social media, I suppose, and what the aftermath has been so far. As of recording, things have only lightly gotten violent, but by the time that you watch this, it'll be sundown, and if you get to it in the morning, feel free to check in on Louisville, because it might not be a pleasant sight. And before we do all that, I just want to thank everybody for stopping by and checking out my videos here. I've had the channel open for a month now, and the support has been tremendous. If there's a topic or any sort of news or sports story that you'd like for me to cover and dig a little bit deeper on, I'm totally open for suggestions. If you want to drop those down in the comment section down below, as well, just discuss any information that you believe is pertinent to this Breonna Taylor case, feel free to drop that there as well. And while you're down there, if you don't mind hitting that subscribe button or just dropping a like, something as simple as that makes me feel really appreciated, guys, and I like that. So before we get too long in the intro, let's go ahead and lay out all the evidence that we had. This is a USA Today article that does a pretty decent job in cataloging everything that we know leading up to the mid-March night where Breonna Taylor was killed. So let's go right for it. A detailed investigative report written more than a month after Louisville Metro Police fatally shot Breonna Taylor in her apartment on March 13th provides the first comprehensive look at the narcotics case that brought officers to her door. Now, what was originally circulated on social media and was kind of the mainstream narrative until, the George Floyd, Black Lives Matter has really taken up in recent weeks, ever since a certain amount of previously unaired body cam footage in the George Floyd death kind of really showed that he may or may not have died from fentanyl overdose, but that's neither here nor there. They've decided that Breonna Taylor was unjustly killed and there's going to be no justice, so they're just going to riot in her name now. Just the typical, switcheroo. And what was originally out there was that wasn't even the house. Breonna Taylor's house wasn't even the house that the police had the no-knock warrant for. That is, in fact, a lie. First one. Though police recovered no drugs or cash from the 26-year-old emergency room technician's apartment in Louisville's South End, the May 1st police report shows how officers linked Taylor to a narcotics investigation centered 10 miles away, largely through evidence that has since been challenged. This article, as you can see here, is from September 4th, and everything else I'm going to be linking to is going to be more recently, and this does a great job. This article here, this USA Today article, does a great job in detailing all the steps that led up to that night on March 13th. After police used a battering ram to break open Taylor's front door, her boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, fired a single shot, which police said struck Sergeant Jonathan Mattingly in the femoral artery. No knock warrant or regular warrant, you fire on a police officer, they have every single right to make sure that the threat is properly put down. You talk to any police officer out there. I have several in my extended family, and I've heard many a testimony from several police officers that your threat analysis It needs to be thorough. And when you or one of your fellow officers get shot in the leg in the femoral artery, which is the largest artery in your body, guess what? Return fire is coming, and it's going to continue until the threat is put down. Mattingly, along with Detective Miles Cosgrove and now fired Detective Brett Hankinson, returned fire, killing Taylor. An attorney for Walker said Tuesday that a fellow officer more than likely shot Mattingly than Walker. That is one of the first disputed claims, because just on where the officer Mattingly was shot, it's very, very difficult based on ballistics and where and how the exit wounds or how the wounds presented themselves. It's very difficult to try to attribute that shot to anybody other than Kenneth Walker. It details a little bit further. Police had a search warrant for Taylor's address. Why they had the arrest warrant or the search warrant for Breonna Taylor's house and not Kenneth Walker or any of his other associates. So misinformation shared on social media suggests the officers showed up to the wrong house, but police had a search warrant signed by Circuit Judge Mary Shaw for Taylor's address and for her. Aha, there we go. I already mentioned that in the opening, but there it is in writing. The 8-page Louisiana Metro Police Department. The 8-page Louisville Metro Police Department report reinforces, however, that Taylor was not the main target of the narcotics investigation, which initially centered around the other individuals accused of selling drugs. The report's author was Detective Joshua Janes, who secured the March 12th warrant for Taylor's home and 4 suspected drug houses, which Walker and his associates were linked to, and there are surveillance, both testimonies and video evidence proving that they were operating and seen at those drug houses. The report also shows that LMPD new place-based investigation squad spent about 2.5 months conducting heavy surveillance. Exactly. Taylor was linked to the suspects in the investigation, according to the report, because a car registered in her name stopped in early January at one of the properties being watched. Exactly. Moreover, it states that Jamarcus Glover, one of the associates, a convicted drug dealer and Taylor's former boyfriend, picked up a package at her home January 16th while police were watching him. The report further says it was Mattingly, the officer who shot at Taylor's apartment, who asked the Postal Service whether Glover was receiving packages at Taylor's apartment. This is very important. Janes wrote in the March 12th sworn affidavit for a search warrant that he had verified that Glover was receiving packages at Taylor's home through a postal inspector. A Louisville postal inspector later told WDRB News that that wasn't true. But Glover listed Taylor's address as his home address when he opened up a Chase Bank account on March 19th. That's when the search warrant was executed, 6 days after her death. Glover listed Taylor's phone number as his when he filed a complaint against a police officer in February for towing his red Dodge Charger for a parking violation. Now we have a sworn affidavit. We have a bunch of, two separate incidences that show that Glover had residence or was at least presenting evidence at Breonna Taylor's house. And he is a convicted drug dealer and suspected of continuing to be active in the drug trade. Janes is on administrative reassignment pending an investigation of how and why the search warrant was approved, Interim Police Chief Robert Schroeder said in June. Which, whenever a case goes under review, it's standard operating procedure for the police departments to put the officers being inspected on administrative leave. So, nothing to see there. The May 1st report was co-signed by Detective Kelly Goodlett, another place-based investigations officer who also authorized a controversial 39-page LMPD report written after Taylor's death that detailed her ties with Glover, the main suspect in the narcotics case. Controversial? Tough to say, really. She was easily... You could make a case that she was aiding and abetting Glover by allowing him to set up bank accounts and use her phone number for, his contact, which would be his home, or at least a reliable way to contact him. So, I don't know, that puts reasonable doubt in my head. Police suspected, according to the May report written by Janes, that Glover may be keeping narcotics and or proceeds from the sale of narcotics at Taylor's apartment for safekeeping. The property seizure log completed after Taylor's apartment following the shooting listed no drugs or money. The report also reflects that the investigation into suspected narcotics trafficking continued beyond the execution of the search warrants at Taylor's death on March 13th. So this is the part of the article from USA Today that details why there was surveillance and why there was a search warrant requested. The place-based investigation squad, a unit created in late December 2019 to focus on small areas ridden with violent crime. Now, if you look at national crime statistics, I'll stray away from the article here for a second just to freeball because my eyes are fucking burning, but this is all important information, guys. Louisville, St. Louis, and that metro area is one of the most violent areas to live in. It has some of the most highest crime statistics, and it has for the past decade. So, and we all know that drug crime, as banal and unnecessary as you might consider it to be, I'm a part of that crew, but it also goes along with a lot of violent crime as well. It's fair to assume that these convicted felons that are been seen at these compromised houses are still continuing with old habits. So Officer Charles Heller wrote in 3 December 30th search warrant affidavits that a confidential informant had reported people selling crack cocaine from 2424 Elliott Ave in the last 48 hours, and a driver of a vehicle stopped by police had reported people were also using 2605 West Muhammad Ali Boulevard for drug sales. Oh man, how could you stutter on that? The fucking greatest boxer alive. Sidebar, I've got a poster of Muhammad Ali just to my right as well. I know, a lot of stuff's to my right. Not a familiar position for me. A judge whose signature isn't legible signed all 3 warrants and authorized police's no-knock request. Heller wrote that it was important the warrants be no-knock search warrants because it is common for drug traffickers to protect their drugs with guns, and that the criminal history of known associates created a particularly dangerous situation. It was determined, Janes wrote, that the epicenter of the narcotics trafficking in the area was 2424 Elliott Avenue. So following that decision, officers kicked off weeks of surveillance, installing a police camera following vehicles and conducting pedestrian and traffic stops. In the weeks before the search warrants were executed March 13th, a confidential informant working with police went to Elliott Avenue and confirmed narcotics were being sold there, according to investigative summary from Janes. And the warrant gave police authority to search Glover, along with Dominique Crenshaw, Demarius Bowman, and Cleve Knight. All of those men were seen at those 2 residences on Elliott Ave and Muhammad Ali Boulevard. So the big question, because her name hasn't come up a lot yet, why was Breonna Taylor part of the investigation? On January 2nd, a pole camera installed at South 24th Street and Elliott Avenue captured footage of a white Chevrolet Impala registered to Taylor pull up in front of 2424 Elliott Ave. The camera footage showed Glover exiting from the passenger side. Now, we don't know who was driving, but it doesn't exactly take a Olympic level leap to surmise that somebody who might be registered to that car would be driving it, but that's not my definitive opinion, but that's definitely a thought that's crossed my mind. A red Dodge Charger that police said was used by both Glover and Adrian Walker, the same one that was towed, by the way, A co-defendant made frequent trips between Elliott Avenue and Springfield Drive, where Taylor lived, according to physical and electronic surveillance, James wrote. Well then, there's your additional tie, and that shows that that vehicle was more than likely used for illegal drug activity. On January 16th, Glover was photographed by police entering Taylor's apartment and left with a suspected USPS package. He then drove to 2605 West Muhammad Ali Boulevard, which Janes described in the search warrant affidavit as a known drug house, hence why they set up all the surveillance. And that kind of immediately discredits the disputed claim on the signed affidavit that the man was picking up packages at Breonna Taylor's house when, in fact, entering Taylor's apartment and left with suspected USPS packages. Or at least one package in this case. I don't know. But of course, Glover has since disputed some of the surveillance evidence. Well, you can dispute it all you want. If they have you on film, if they have you, if eyewitnesses pin you there, well, he said he was just keeping the packages safe because he was worried about theft in the area. Right, yeah, because a criminal would know a lot about theft, by the way. So if this was just a simple drug bust, if this was a, one of the 5 houses that needed to be taken down for this drug bust to be successful, why was a no-knock warrant issued? Why did the police just barge in and immediately try to apprehend Kenneth Glover? Well, that's a little bit more misinformation that's been out there. Kentucky AG denies cops executed no-knock warrant in Breonna Taylor case. Uh-oh. The Louisville police officers involved in Breonna Taylor shooting death knocked and announced themselves and did not execute a no-knock warrant as previously believed, Kentucky's Attorney General said Wednesday. Well then, just because they got the no-knock warrant sign-off, somebody at the last minute decided that, they're just going to cover their ass. They figured that they had sufficient backup and they could properly execute a regular raid. So that kind of puts Kenneth Glover's I was startled and didn't know it was the police defense. Man, it really makes that seem untenable. At a press conference, AG Daniel Cameron, that is that man at the podium right there. As you notice, in the coming days, he'll be described as internalizing whiteness and not being black enough. So I just wanted you guys to see the fact that he is indeed a black man. At a press conference, the Attorney General said neighbors corroborated the cops' claims that they knocked on Taylor's apartment door and announced themselves as police in the early hours of March 13th. There we go. They announced that they were there. They announced that they were police, and Kenneth Walker fired on the police. There's no two ways about it. There's no more of this, this lady, Breonna Taylor, was shot. They went to the wrong house. They barged in. They were in plain clothes. All of that shit is thoroughly disputed. And now, what do we got? Evidence showed officers knocked and announced their presence at the apartment, Cameron said, following the announcement from a grand jury to indict one of the officers, Brett Hankinson, on 3 counts of wanton endangerment in the first degree for firing his weapon into another apartment. Man, this is I don't know if it's an unpopular opinion, but that's fair. Okay. It would be tough to argue manslaughter. It's absolutely out of the realm of possibility for it to be murder of any sort. Was he being reckless? Probably, because he didn't hit his intended target. Did he premeditate anything? No. Police officers don't go out every day looking forward to shooting their gun. Man, is a wanton endangerment first degree charges, in my opinion, That seems fair. But it doesn't matter what I think, because I wasn't going to go out and riot either way. Oh, did I say riot? I mean peacefully protest. Because as of right now, as at the time of watching, I'm sure Louisville is partially on fire. And the only way that you're going to hear about that is through videos like mine. So let's see who's currently stoking these flames. Celebrities, athletes react to Breonna Taylor verdict. Of course, the most informed individuals. I've spent hours researching this. I've done my due diligence in order to present a factual representation of what happened that night, and I think I've done a very good job of that. But let's see what the intelligentsia out there have to say. That's a new word, intelligentsia. The intelligentsia out there have to say. Celebrity including Schitt's Creek language creator and star Dan Levy. This thing, rapper Common, of course, and Viola Davis spoke out Wednesday over the grand jury's decision in a police shooting death of Breonna Taylor. Now, Dan Levy, boy, he's doing the old Kamala Harris here. Please contribute if you can. Justice should not be a luxury. Now, what does he mean by that? He wants to create a slush fund for rioters to get bail. And that's what he's calling for. In a tweet with the hashtag Breonna Taylor, Levy asked his followers to consider donating to a Louisville community bail fund. So, I don't know if that's directly a call for violence, but that's definitely setting everything up for violence. That's the most generous claim you can make. So I don't know if he's bored or what the fuck, just not getting enough attention lately. George Clooney decided to peek his weathered old face in. A Kentucky native said he was ashamed of the grand jury's decision because justice is never good enough. They want these officers hanging, and even still, there's currently videos circulating around that Antifa was already milling about the city and already had their protest signs up. So these 3 officers could have been sentenced to the gas chambers later today, and fucking Louisville would still be getting smashed up. Portland would still be getting smashed up. Anywhere where these gatherings have previously been violent, this is just going to be George Floyd riots part 2. Mark my words on that. So what did Clooney have to say? The justice system is raised. I was raised to believe in holds. Ugh. The justice system I was raised to believe in holds people responsible for their actions, Clooney said in a statement to Deadline. Yeah, the Attorney General was on a case. A grand jury leveled the charges. So I would consider that justice. Her name was Breonna Taylor, and she was shot to death in her bed. Wrong. Wrong. See, why did people listen to celebrities? That's enough. They all just call for violence and fucking seek justice, even though justice has already been done. They don't know. They keep pushing what sounds good because they're all desperate for attention. They could give a fuck about real justice. They just... Oh, man. It's getting tiresome having to figure out the motives of these psychopaths, because that's what they are. They're just unhinged individuals, and I don't want to drag George Clooney. He doesn't know who the fuck I am. It's highly likely we'll never cross paths, and I'd be fine with that, because actors are vapid idiots, and that's just another perfect example of that. They don't have their own opinions. They get them fucking IV dripped into their veins by their shitty agents who are informed by shitty MSM, who's all based on fucking lies. I read you nearly word for word. It'll be linked in the description if you'd like to see a little bit more. The no-knock shit was bullshit. The search warrant was valid, and as far as I'm concerned, very much, these 5 houses were very much the center of drug activity. Like it or lump it, Breonna Taylor was in the wrong place at the wrong time and was hooked up with the wrong people. Should she have died? Absolutely not. Should she have placed herself in that situation? Should she have opened up her home to a bunch of criminals? Absolutely not. Shouldn't be victim blaming, and she should have known better too. One last diatribe. People should know that their actions have consequences, and not in the, oh, you say something, we're going to cancel you and end your life type of consequences. Understand that you are the summation of 5 people that you surround yourself with. Now, Breonna Taylor, her ex-boyfriend was a convicted felon. Her current boyfriend was at least being, suspected of dealing drugs. She did not put herself into a situation that would be advantageous to success, like it or not. Use her as the perfect example of somebody who was trying to make their life better. She, as you can see in the picture right here, she was on her way in a career, and she just kept making shitty decisions. She didn't deserve to die. Actions have consequences. Like it or lump it. Before we end, I just want to give you a, as of right now, what is happening in Louisville. Civil unrest in Louisville intensifies hours after Breonna Taylor grand jury decision. Hundreds chanting, "No justice, no peace," took to the streets, and less than 3 hours after the charges were handed down against former Louisville police detective Brent Hankinson, confrontations broke out between police and protesters. Of course. And yeah, we'll just run through the gallery here. As you can see, oh yes, yep, shit's all over the road, obviously. Yep, standing up on barricades, like just a bunch of people in the street. I'm sure he was probably just an innocent individual. He probably, maybe he just tripped, who knows. But that's the end of that. Shit's already getting smashed up, and like I said, I think this is just going to be George Floyd riots part 2. This is going to be like the first couple of weeks of June. Shit's going to be burning in Louisville, and I'm sure it's a beautiful town. I'm sure it's a wonderful place to live. City, I suppose. Hey man, you let the mob come into town. But I'll tell you what, law enforcement only happens on one side of this. Portland Parks deny permit for planned Proud Boys rally in North Portland. Guess what, Portland? You guys are right proper fucked, because these guys were... Hey, what's their motto? Mess around, fuck around, and find out, right? They would have just came in peacefully, demonstrated for Aaron Danielson, for Kyle Rittenhouse. They never incite the violence. But according to City Commissioner Amanda Fritz, the right-wing rally group, or the right-wing rally, would have violated social distancing guidelines during COVID pandemic. Let's go back and take a look at some of those pictures. You're meaning to tell me that doesn't violate any social distancing? You're meaning to tell me that these people have a permit? Of course they don't. Of course they don't. This is the beginning of right think and wrong think at a judicial level. It's gonna get fucking bonkers, and this video's already long enough, and I don't need to go on a tirade. The fact that conservative thought is under attack. Scott Adams had it right a few months ago when he said conservatives will be hunted. And guess what? They had the go-ahead from local jurisdictions. But hopefully that gave you guys a nice comprehensive look into what happened with Breonna Taylor that night. Like I said, unfortunately, she was a bystander in a really shitty situation. Never find yourself in that situation, guys. Anyways, hopefully the next video, I know it's going to be, I already know what I'm going to talk about. Ooh, I planned this shit. It's going to be a lot more light, and yeah, if you like to party, the subject of the next video sure does too. Anyways, guys, I've been Khan Swaylo. I want you guys to follow your gut. Get after it. Take care, everyone.